Hello, happy Sunday, guys. Sorry about that late start. Just trying to get our technicals figured out here. We'll get it right here sooner or later. Hoping you guys are all having a great break and enjoying family and are excited for Christmas and the new year. I'm super excited for it myself. I'll give everybody a moment here to join us because people might have come here earlier and didn't see us live, so they might have left. Let me know where you guys are joining from today. I'd love to see where we got people coming from. And today is going to be a extra special session where we're going to be talking about the quantum field and how to enter it. Let me know where you guys are joining us from. Julie's coming from Iowa. Hello, Julie. Marco from Houston. Ben, what's up? I know where you are. Happy to have you guys. How's Minneapolis today? I hope not super cold. How you doing, Pansy? What's up, Phil? Great to have you guys. Wonderful. Oh, Sedona, what a beautiful place. If I could spend my life in Sedona, I would absolutely do that. What a incredibly beautiful environment with like all of the good stuff. It's high energy, high vibes, great people there. Definitely a very connected place to be in. All right. So I want to dive in a little bit here and give us a little bit of exposition before we get into the techniques that I use to slip in to the unified field, the quantum field. Some may call it the upper room. There's a number of different names for it. I've also heard Dr. Deepak Chopra refer to it as the field of infinite potentiality. But it is definitely a real place and a spot that we can actually get into to help bring forward our manifestations, the things that we are looking to create in our physical lives, in our physical realities. And the reality is that we create 3D reality in the field first, and then we experience it in 3D. Now, I know that may sound a little bit heady, and I'll give you guys an experiment that was conducted that actually proved that the field, that unified field, actually informs physical reality and not the other way around. So, classical thinking, Newtonian thinking, once upon a time, used to have it where our physical bodies, our presence, our ability to be in the world was the informing characteristic that informed our energetic field, right? And it would make sense, if you were to think about it from a very surface level. Let's just say you were in a bad mood, and you were feeling that emotion in your chest and your belly, through your body. Maybe you're thinking negative looping thoughts, whatever that might look like for you. You would think or imagine that what's going on inside of here, and what's going on inside of here, what's going on inside of here would be creating an energetic field, and that energetic field would then be informing the world around you. And to an extent, it does. However, an experiment that was conducted not too long ago showed how the field, so our energetic fields, actually informs matter. Now, what they had done is they had looked at women who had ovarian cancer, and they had done these scans of their bodies that allowed them to see the resonant field that was being created around that person, right? So the electromagnetic field that's being created from the individual. And what they found when they looked at that physical scan, when they actually had it on paper and they seen what it actually looked like. All of the women who had ovarian cancer had this one very distinct distortion in their energetic fields, right? So every woman that had ovarian cancer had that distortion, right? Are we all following this? If you guys are tracking with what I'm saying, let me understand that let me see that you guys are understanding it. Okay. Now, if we were to make the conclusion that women with ovarian cancer are affecting their energetic fields, we would potentially be correct, right? By looking at that observation. Yet what they found was that in scanning some other women, they found that that distortion existed, but they didn't have cancer. And that perplexed the scientists, right? Because they said, well, what's interesting here is 100% of the women who have ovarian cancer have this distortion in their field. Yet there are these other women who have this distortion in their field who don't have ovarian cancer. So what is going on here? Well, what they later concluded was that all of those women who hadn't yet had ovarian cancer but had the distortion in their field ended up getting ovarian cancer, right? And so that's what allowed them to understand that it was actually the other way around. It wasn't that the women with ovarian cancer were affecting their fields. It was that the field was what was the precursor to the ovarian cancer. And that is a really important thing for us to think about, because that shows us that lets us understand that what's going on in the field is what's informing matter, right? So if a distortion exists in the energetic field, it is informing matter. And we know that because these women all developed ovarian cancer over time that had the distortion in the field. So that lets us understand that if we want to affect reality, that we don't make changes to the physical matter. We need to affect and change what's happening in the field. Are we all tracking that? Let me know if you are understanding what I mean there so that I can keep going. Okay, so we understand that the field is informing reality, right? The field is what's making the change in the physical manifestation of this thing. So now, if we understand that it's the field that is affecting reality or physical matter and not matter affecting the field, then that gives us a tool, that gives us an opportunity to affect the physical, the electromagnetic field, which is what we are doing when we do some of this work, right? When we're doing our energetics, the specific modalities that I've spoken of in the past, when we're doing these exercises, these practices, we are informing the field. Kathy Sonner said, define the field. Great question. So, of course, this is still being proven, and it is still being more and more evidence is coming into our understanding of what's going on in the field and its actual existence. However, what we need to understand is Einstein, Tesla, all of these scientists have understood that there is a field that exists all around us through entire space. Now, when we think of a field, I want you to think of a magnet, right? If you've ever looked at a magnet, and if you've seen these experiments when you were a kid, but they would put iron filings over a magnet. Who's ever seen that? Where you take a magnet, you put a piece of paper on it, and then you take iron filings and you spread it all over the magnet, right? If you do that, what you'll find is that there is this field, there is this invisible energetic or magnetic substance that exists around the magnet that causes the magnetic field, right? Now, we know that fields exist because they're happening all around us. If you think about the electrical grid or Wi-Fi, right? Think of Wi-Fi. All of these things are traveling through a medium, right? And that medium is what is known as the field. Now, they used to believe that there were a certain number of fields that were not connected to each other. But what Einstein and other scientists who are continuing to study this specific phenomenon are starting to come to the conclusion of is that there is one unifying field that ties in electromagnetism, the magnetic field, gravitation, all of these specific forces, and it unifies all of these different forces into one field, one unified field. All right. So it is what is happening all around us, above us, below us, through us. This field exists, completely invisible to us, but it exists, and we are interacting with it at all times. And it is interacting with us. Now, I hope does that track? Okay, I want to make sure, Kathy, that you understand that and that tracks for you. So, if we're thinking about the nature of matter, we can go back to particle and wave duality, which scientists have proven exists. Now, what this means is that all physical reality, all physical matter exists in two forms. All right, it exists as a particle and it exists as a wave. All right, so everything that exists in our physical world exists in two forms: particle and wave. Now, what they found was that the reason why we're not wave half the time, like if you think about how crazy this is, that I exist as both a particle and a wave, you exist as both particle and wave, yet you're looking at me, I'm looking at me in the screen, and I'm solid, right? I can feel this. I'm solid. I feel solid, at least. But if we took a microscope and we went really, really, really close, if we zoomed in, we would find that I'm made up of atoms, and those atoms are actually vibrating very quickly. And what exists in those atoms is 99.9% empty space. So this solidity that you see here is actually more of a mental construct than it is real, right? The solidity, and our brain is filtering out so much information so that we can interact in our world, so that we're not just like, stepping in front of ourselves and freaking out because there may not be solid ground there. Because if we were able to see that, if we were able to see the way that an electron microscope can zoom in and see, everything would freak us out. You wouldn't even want to lay down on your bed, because your bed would be a bunch of atoms just vibrating very quickly that made you feel like there may or may not be a bed there. Okay, so that is actually the reality of what we're living in here, right? That's a real thing. And now many people they'll refer to that as the Matrix. They'll refer to that as this, extremely weird reality, scientific reality, that the things that we're observing as solid aren't actually solid. Okay, so I want to go back and think about, why do we have the appearance of solidity when we're actually one of two things? Now, for anyone who's taken statistics, you understand that if one thing, or if an object has the capacity to be two things, right? Let's just take a coin, for example. A coin could be on one side heads and on the other side tails, right? So we know that 50% of the time this coin is heads, 50% of the time the coin is tails. Now, if we were to flip that coin 1,000 times, statistically, we would have a 50-50 ratio of getting heads and a 50-50 ratio of getting tails. Does that track for everybody listening right now. Just wanting to make sure that we're all on the same page. Okay, so we know that statistically, if something can be one of two things, that 50% of the time it will be one of those two things. Now, we know through particle wave duality that we exist as two things, right? So, wouldn't it make sense that 50% of the time we would be particle and 50% of the time we would be wave? Does that track with that? Does that make sense to you guys here? Now, if we understand that statistically, 50% of the time we would be particle and 50% of the time we would be wave, why am I not disappearing half the time? Like, why are you able to see me the entire time? Right? Even though 50-50, I should be particle, and 50-50, I should be wave. Why am I always appearing as a particle, as solid to you? Well, the reason for it is what we described in the double slit experiment, where scientists threw a photon, they shot a photon, so they shot one of basically what we're made out of through two slits. And they observed, well, actually, they measured that 50% of the time it would exist as a particle, and 50% of the time it would exist as a wave. So they were measuring this. And then it changed when the scientists actually looked at it. So the moment that scientists looked at it, the wave function collapsed and it appeared particle 100% of the time. So that tells us that our observation, our attention, our consciousness is what is creating physical reality, the solidity of the natural world. So we are in concert with reality. Now, why am I going into this study with you guys? Why are we talking about this? Well, that is what brings us to the manifestation process. See, many people think that manifestation is this woo-woo thing that we're just making wishes and we're, things will come to us because we're like sitting there really hoping that they do, right? When in all actuality, that's not the case. In all actuality, what we're doing when we're manifesting is we are interacting with the unified field. So if you really want to speed up your manifestations, if you want your manifestations to actually exist or to find themselves in the physical world, you have to first create them in the field, right? We have to first create them in the energetic field. And so your question may be, well, how do we do that? How do we get there? And that's what's leading me into the topic of today's discussion. So that was all a preamble, guys. Many of you will have heard me talk about that in the past. And if you did and you stuck around, thank you for that. But there's some people who hadn't really understood this or had never heard of it. And so I wanted to just give us a little bit of an exposition so we could all get up to speed. So we understand that the manifestation process exists in that unified field. And if we want to manifest something in our lives, maybe it is more money, maybe it is a better relationship or a new relationship, maybe it is a better relationship with ourselves, whatever that might be, right? It has to be created in the field first, and then it will find its way into physical reality. So it has to be created in the field first, and then it finds its way into physical reality. So again, the question, how do we affect the field? How do we get into the field? Now, there's a number of different ways that we can get into and affect the field. Some of these will be interesting to you and some of them won't be. So before I get into these, I just want to give us all a moment to lay whatever judgments we have, okay, whatever preconceived philosophies that we're coming to this call with, to just set them aside and to open your mind up to understanding that there is a lot out there that we can understand and experience. And not everything that I'm going to bring to us as a potential way to enter the field is for everybody, right? Some of us may not agree with some of these exercises. They're not for all, but take what resonates with you and leave what doesn't. Again, it's not my job here to judge people. It's not my job to assign meaning or good or bad to things. I'm just sharing with you what I have researched and what I've experienced. And so these are some of the ways that I have been able to slip into the quantum field. Now, the first is meditation, right? But it's not just simple meditation, because many of us have meditated, and you'll probably say, Jamil, I've meditated before, and all I had was racing thoughts. All I was doing was thinking about, I got to do this today. This happened yesterday. My boss sucks. Whatever it was, whatever's going on in your mind, these are all the thoughts that are happening. And so I didn't really feel like I was manifesting in there because my mind was racing all over the place. And you're right. In circumstances like that, in a situation like that, manifestation would be very difficult. You need to be in a state of meditation where who you are as a personality isn't there, right? So maybe you're asking, how the heck do you do that? Well, Joe Dispenza, who I've studied and I admire greatly, speaks of this as a place where you are no one, nowhere, in no time. All right? You are no one, nowhere, in no time. Now, to put that into simple language, it is the dissolution of the ego. Okay? It is the dissolution of the thing that is binding you as this specific person in this world, right? So for me, the personality of Jamil, right? The different labels, the attachments, the preferences, the aversions, all of these different things that I have as me, right? That make up me. I need to set those things aside. I need to set aside being Jamil so that I can be no one, nowhere, in no time, in no space, so that I can enter into that spot. And so if I want to be in that place of pure potentiality, if I want to be where it is all energetics and wave, I have to set aside the particle nature of Jamil. I can't come in as this. I can't come in as this physical 3D me. And I can't come in with my problems. I can't come in with my attachments. I can't come in with my ego. I can't come in with the things that I like, or I can't come in with the things that I dislike. I have to come in completely blank. To get into that. And yes, I just read this. Melanie says, Jesus described it as becoming childlike. Yes, that is exactly right, because we are not conditioned. The child isn't conditioned, doesn't have all of those labels, doesn't have all of those attachments. Children are literally the most connected to the field that there could be, because they don't have all of these concepts. Their parents haven't been able to infect them with all of these different things. And so the world is still very, 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 very open and neutral. And because they can set those things aside, they can actually come into that quantum state. They can come into that quantum field very quickly, which is why you see children and their imaginations and how they're able to interact with the world as such a beautiful thing, and why they affect us so deeply when we're around them. I was actually at a Christmas party last night watching these little kids just incredibly joyful at the smallest little things. They were running around, screaming, having the best time of their lives, and not a single adult was capable of doing that. Not a single one of the adults that was there was having nearly as much fun as the children. The only adults that I was seeing that were even getting close to that emotion or getting close to that experience were the parents of the little ones, who were watching those children with that awe, with that, I wish I could be like that again. I wish I could be like those innocent, sweet little children, because unfortunately I have all of these worries. I have all of this Jamilness that's been tackled onto me and stapled onto me. And it's unfortunate that I can't slip into that state as easily or even at all in my adulthood, right? So again, we have to set aside the ego. We have to set aside the personality structure in order to slip into that place. So what are some of the methods? I spoke of meditation. But again, it's not just simple meditations, it's the meditations that allow you to set that aside. There is a meditation technique called japa, J-A-P-P-A, japa meditation, where it's a contemplation on all of the things you are not, right? So you could contemplate, well, I'm not my thoughts, I'm not my body, I'm not this worry, I'm not this goal, I'm not this dream. Then what am I? Right? And it's the contemplation and asking of that question. It's going through and thinking about all of the things that you are not, and then asking the question, what am I? Right? And so in that exercise, in that practice, you can get to that place where you are no one, nowhere, no time, no space, and enter into the field. Cameron says prayer. Yes, absolutely. Many people, many people have been able to enter into that state, into that field through fervent prayer, through heartfelt, heart-opened prayer, without any ask, without any expectations, without any attachments. Just pure open-heartedness in prayer will absolutely get you into that spot. And the reality is that it is sometimes difficult for people to get into that through prayer, because what we do here in the West is we typically pray when things aren't good, right? A lot of people only pray when they need something, when they want something, or when things are going wrong. And that's when you see them getting into this, habit of, or this activity of prayer, because things aren't really going so well. Right. And so that's when they turn to prayer. But it's actually most important to be turning to prayer when that's not happening, when life is as great as it could possibly be, when there is not a thing that you want, when there's not a desire that you're asking for, when there's not a single problem to be solved, when you can just come in free of all of that attachment and just pray open-heartedly. That can absolutely help you slip into that state, that quantum field. So yes, prayer is 1,000,000% one of those methods. I've spoken of this in the past, but breath work, somatic holotropic breath work, has absolutely been a game changer for me. And I believe the reason that it has been so helpful is that when you're in that state, when you are in those breathing exercises, what tends to happen is you get into a rhythm, and that rhythm becomes almost transcendent. It becomes you're in a trance. Now, in addition to being in that trance, when we're inhaling and exhaling at that type of frequency, what happens neurotransmittally is we are dumping different chemicals, different neurotransmitters into the body, which are also causing a dissociative effect. One of those neurotransmitters is called beta carboline, which has a very similar chemical structure to a benzodiazepine or something like Valium. So it relaxes the body. It relaxes the skeletal muscle. It relaxes the body. It actually down-regulates the sympathetic nervous system and up-regulates the parasympathetic nervous system. And so we're in that state of pure relaxation, right? And all the aches are gone. The tension is gone. And you can get into that place where you again enter into no time, no one, no space, and you are in that field. Okay, so breath work is absolutely one of those techniques. Ecstatic dance, believe it or not, is another way for people to enter into that field. Now, there have been many different religious I want to say this correctly, different religious belief structures that bring ecstatic dance as a practice into their worship. Some of those, for instance, in Sufism in Islam, the Sufi mystics would have what was called the whirling dervish, and the whirling dervish would spin until they entered into an ecstatic state, and that would again then put them into that place of no one, no time, nowhere, and they would enter into that quantum or that unified field. Right, so you can get there through ecstatic dance. It doesn't have to be associated to any specific religion or any specific type of worship practice, but it's just generating that energy, increasing the vibratory field of the body that then puts you into that place where you release or you set aside the Jamilness or the Diana-ness or the Jason-ness or the Kathy-ness or the Pansy-ness of what you are, and it puts you into that spot. So ecstatic dance absolutely will get you into that place. Now, hypnosis has, again, been one of those ways to enter into that place. Now, you can do this through self-hypnosis, or you can do it with a practitioner who can help you slip into that place. And again, it just gets you out of the analytical mind. It sort of down regulates the prefrontal cortex and puts you into that space of the brain where the reality of who you are, the different things that make up your conditioning are minimized, so that you can enter into that place without all of the attachments of what makes you you. So again, self-hypnosis or hypnosis is a great way to do that. Now, again, no judgment here, guys, but this is actually one of the ways that you can get into this state, but through physical intimacy, right? Through physical intimacy. Now, the ancient Indian techniques of Tantra are what I'm relating to here. It's found when that two people who enter into that type of situation with each other, so they're intimate, they can get into a place where they dissolve, right? Where the separateness of who they are dissolves and they become one thing, right? Now, in that place, when their hearts are completely open and they set aside the ego, they set aside all of what makes them separate, they can enter into that ecstatic place, that place where they're in pure bliss, they're disassociated from their personality structures, and they're in that field. It's a great area to manifest from. So you'll find that there's many different practitioners out there who use physical intimacy as a vehicle. Again, not saying, it is what you guys want to do, or, it's up to you, totally up to you, how you want to take that. But it absolutely is one of the modalities to get you into that field. Next, again, please set aside judgment. There are many people who have been helped by this type of work, but psychedelics have been known through appropriate transmission or appropriate use, like a doctor or a therapist can find themselves in that state. So they can disassociate from their physical structures, from their physical bodies, and they enter into the energetic realm. They're able to set aside who they are and enter into that place. Now, again, totally up to you on whether or not that is something that is interesting to you or something that you believe in or would do. But I'm just sharing with you what some of these different modalities to get into this are, right? So writing has been known to be one of those places or one of those activities that'll get you into that field. Now, the best time that they found for someone to be able to enter into that place and write would be first thing in the morning. So many of you have a journaling practice that you do. The studies have shown that if you want to get that stream of consciousness that's not attached to the ego, not attached to the everyday happenings of your life, that doing that writing first thing in the morning will help push you into that space of no time, no one, nowhere, no thing. So writing. Art. Yes, art. So looking at, expressing, or enjoying art can be very transcendental. That's why art has been such an incredible medium, why so many of us are attracted to it, why good writing or a beautiful art piece can really take you out of the you-ness and put you into the experience of that art. So art has been known for thousands of years as a way for people to be able to enter into that state. That's why you see art in hieroglyphics on the walls of the pyramids. That's why art has been around since we started to exist. If we look at ancient humans, when we were still Australopithecus, before we even became hominids, art was a part of our expression. And so by being able to disassociate yourself from the you-ness and put yourself into that place of usness or allness, that's when the most beautiful art is created. And that's why it is so subjective, yet we can all agree that when we look at the Mona Lisa, that something happens to us, that we're affected internally by looking at this beautiful art. And the same happens in music, right? So I separated art and music from each other, although I think that they will actually, blend in very easily. But music is another one of these medium that can allow us to enter into that place. Now, through different types of music, I've found that for me, classical is a really great type of music to disassociate myself from the meanness and get into that place where I transcend that, where I set aside who I am, my problems, all of the things, and I just become the music. My emotions start to move with the music, and I start to feel as if I'm in another spot. So music is absolutely incredibly powerful in getting us into that state. Nature. So you've maybe been on a hike before where you have felt like you were connected to the environment, right? So many people find it very easy to enter into that space, into that field when they're in nature and they just see the beauty of a mountain range, or the beauty of a forest, or the beauty of the ocean and the sound of the ocean. That relaxation that comes from being in those states or in those types of environments is absolutely transcendent. And you can very easily step out of the you-ness when you are in the majesty of beautiful nature, this most incredible these sites. Like, for instance, I'm going to Banff for the New Year celebration, and every time I'm out there, I have that sense that there is so much that I'm just this little thing in all of this majesty and all of this glory of the world. And it really does allow me to separate myself from me, where I can just become pure awareness, right? And so getting into nature is why it's probably one of the most easy things for us to do, because we have it available to us all the time. Even if you're living in a city, you can still find yourself in beautiful natural environments, typically by just, looking for a garden or looking for a tranquil place, a lake, something that is close by that'll allow you to get into that spot, right? So nature has absolutely been, for me, one of those very readily available ways to step into and slip into the field. Now, again, getting into the field, as you can see, is pretty. There's a lot of different ways, right? There's so many different modalities to enter into it, and you may wonder, okay, well, how do we interact, or what do we do once we're in the field, right? What do you do when you're in the field? Well, this is where your emotional state matters, right? This is where how you feel is extremely important. And so coming into these different modalities with a plan is highly advisable, right? I don't sit in meditation. I won't start a breath work journey. I won't do these things without setting an intention, right? So typically what I'll do is I'll set an intention for something that I'm trying to accomplish, or something that I'm looking to work on or work through. And in setting that intention, I create for myself an anchor into an emotion. Now, when I put myself in that field, when I put myself and I set aside the Jamilness, all the ego, and I can be as pure awareness in that space, that's when I can anchor back into what that intention was, and I can start to feel the emotion that I'm trying to bring into my world, right? So again, that emotion is extremely important to feel when you're in that place of pure potentiality, because that is what you're going to interact with. I want to give you an example that I think many of you guys would be able to relate to. I was on a walk this morning, and there was a bunch of dogs running around out there by the river where I go and walk here in Calgary. And I noticed that there was somebody who was doing something that was having all of the dogs that were out running come and rush towards where that person was. Can anybody guess what that person was doing? What was that person doing that was making all of those dogs come rush towards them? I'd like to see in the chat. Yes, Dennis Sylvan, this is live, so you can also put in what your guess is here. What do you think the person was doing who was bringing all of those dogs running towards them? And some of these dogs were like far away, right? Far away. Okay, so Jason said treats. Well, good guess. But there was no way for the dogs to see the treat that far away or even smell the treat that far away, right? So it definitely wasn't treats, although that was a great guess. Juliana said training. No, my dog typically runs away from training, so I don't think any of them were going to run towards it. Craig said running and getting excited. Yeah, that is fun for a dog, but the way that this was working, this person was in one spot and all of these dogs came running towards it, right? So they weren't playing, they weren't chasing them, right? So this person was in one spot, and Diana Hoff got it right. Dog whistle, the dog whistle, right? So I couldn't hear the dog whistle. Nobody there could hear the dog whistle except the dogs, right? The dogs all came running towards this person who was blowing in this dog whistle. Now, what was that whistle emitting? What would that be called? What would that be called? Put your guesses in the chat. What do you think that was? It was a frequency. Okay, it was a frequency. They were, yes, Jason, he was emitting a frequency. And that frequency was attaching to the dog. It was resonating with the dog, and the dog had no choice. It had no choice but to rush towards the frequency, right? So right there, friends, is an example of how it works. If you want your future to run towards you, you have to emit the frequency, and it has to be emitted in the correct medium, right? Now, we know the medium can't be the physical world here, right? It's got to be not in the world of particle. It has to be in the world of wave. So we enter into the world of wave, and we emit that frequency. And when we emit that frequency, what happens? Like all the dogs, it comes rushing towards us. Friends, I want you to take this lesson and find a way to metabolize it as much as you can. If that means going back and watching this a few times to really wrap your head around what I'm talking about here, do so. Because what I want you to understand is that we're coming into a new year. And what happens in the new year is many of us, we set these resolutions. We try to reset and create a new frequency for our lives. Now, why do you think 80% of us fail? Why do you think we fail when we're doing that? I'd love to hear your guesses. Why do you think we fail at the rate we fail with our New Year resolutions? Well, not a lot of guesses, but I'll tell you. The reason why we fail is because we are trying to actually affect matter. And yes, Ben, the frequency isn't right. We're emitting the wrong frequency. We're doing it in the physical plane. We're doing it as particle, and we're not doing it as wave. And it gets very difficult when you are trying to work in a world where you are having to push to make anything happen. Wouldn't it make so much more sense and be so much easier if we could bring it towards us? Right? So I say this all so that when we're moving into making our resolutions for the new year, right? Setting our intentions for 2025. I want us to do so in a place where we understand that in order for us to hold it in our hand, we need to be able to create it in the field. We need to be able to hold it in our head first. We need to be able to see it there in order to feel it here. And just like those women who all experienced ovarian cancer because of the distortion in their field, we need to change our fields for 2025 if 2025 is to produce the goals that we are trying to accomplish. Now, whether that be more money, better relationships, or all of the above, whatever that is for you, greater connection to God, doesn't matter. All of these things are possible. Everything is possible. Everything. If you are doing it with an open heart and you're doing it in a way where it is a resonance, the frequency resonates with what you are trying to accomplish. Because again, friends, if the goal that you're trying to achieve is of one frequency, but you are not, unfortunately, you won't get the goal. It's just what it is. So between now and the 31st, my wish, my prayer, my hope for you is to find a way for you to set aside the you-ness over the next few days. The things that make you, the attachments, the likes, the dislikes, all of the things. Set those aside. Get yourself into the field and create the emotional experience of how you want 2025 to unfold for you. And like the gentleman who was blowing in the whistle, may all of your hopes and dreams come rushing towards you. I pray and hope for all of you guys to have a beautiful Christmas, a beautiful New Year celebration with your families and your friends. And I wish and pray and hope for every one of you that your year is everything you desire. I love you guys. And 2024 was an incredible year for me. I hope it was for you. There was a lot of growth. There was so many things. I bumped my head against the wall many times. But what I can say is I created an environment internally for myself through the year that had all of the beautiful things that I wanted in my life, finding their way to me through the year. And my goal, my wish, my hope and prayer for you is for that to occur in your lives. God bless you all, and I'll see you after the new year. Take care. Bye, folks. And if you got any value out of this, do me a favor before I end the stream, hit the like button, please, because so many of you guys show up here and forget to do that. And it's super helpful for me to be able to get this message out to more folks. And if there's somebody that you love that might be going through some things or is trying to make a change in their life, what would be awesome is if you shared this specific video with them. If they're looking for anything new, something different, for things to change, this might be the catalyst that gets them there. Take care, folks. Have a beautiful rest of 2024. See ya.